I agreed to a 2-week pause because a small part of me still believed we could remember why we fell in love. On day 3, a photo popped up. She's at a party, some guy's hand on her waist, captioned, "An amazing night, just like old times." I read that line 3 times. I wasn't angry, I wasn't jealous. I just knew I had 2 choices: text her and ask, or quietly end everything. I'm Jake Miller, 32 years old. Welding's been my life since I was 18, and it's treated me well. I work industrial construction in Houston. Long hours, high heat, the kind of work that leaves your hands scarred but your bank account solid. I'd saved enough to buy my own place at 27, a 1950s ranch on a quiet street, big oak tree out front, the kind of home you picture raising kids in. Every weekend for 2 years, I was under the crawl space, rewiring, sanding floors, installing a granite kitchen with my own hands. When I met Emily, I thought she understood what that house meant. It wasn't just 4 walls. It was proof that I could build something worth keeping. For a while, she seemed to love it, and me. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that some people love what you have, not who you are. Emily Carter was 30 when we met. Smart smile, easy laugh, and a way of looking at you that made you feel like the only guy in the room. She worked as a receptionist for a mid-sized insurance firm downtown, pulling in about half my salary. It didn't matter to me. I wasn't looking for someone to split every bill 50-50. I just wanted a partner who had my back the way I'd have hers. When we married, we agreed on a simple arrangement. I'd cover the mortgage. It was my house before the wedding. And she'd take care of groceries, utilities, and a few upgrades. We settled into a rhythm. Evenings on the porch, her talking about the latest office drama, me telling stories from the job site. Back then, life felt steady, predictable, safe. I didn't realize that for Emily, steady would one day feel like boring. Those first 2 years of marriage were the kind you'd call normal in the best way. We split the everyday stuff. Emily handled groceries, utilities, little decorative touches she swore made a house a home. I kept the mortgage on my shoulders and poured my weekends into finishing what I'd started. That ranch had good bones, but it was stuck in the 1950s. I'd already gutted the kitchen, run all new copper plumbing, and refinished the hardwood until it glowed in the Texas sunlight. We argued about thermostat settings, laughed about whose turn it was to do the dishes, and planned trips we couldn't quite afford yet. She dreamed of Paris. I dreamed of paying off the house early. It felt like we were building something real together. Looking back, I wonder if Emily ever saw the house as ours, or just as mine. If I've got one constant in my life besides welding, it's Stephen Harper. We met in college, me studying welding tech, him in computer science, and somehow stayed in sync despite living in different worlds. He's the kind of friend who won't sugarcoat a damn thing. If you're screwing up, he'll tell you straight, usually with a joke sharp enough to cut steel. Stefan's been over to my place more times than I can count, the kind of guy who'll help you move a refrigerator for the price of a 6-pack. Emily liked him at first, until she realized he could read people like a blueprint. The first time he met Brittany Lane, Emily's life coach friend from college, he didn't even wait until we were alone. He leaned over and whispered, "That one's trouble, Jake. Trust me." I should have listened harder. Brittany Lane swept back into Emily's life like a dust storm out of the desert, sudden, loud, and impossible to ignore. They'd been friends in college, lost touch, and now here she was, freshly divorced after a short, ugly marriage to some tech guy in Austin. No kids, no responsibilities, just $2,500 a month in alimony and a downtown loft that looked like it belonged in a reality show. She was all bleached hair, designer handbags, and Instagram stories about living your best life. Every weekend it was rooftop bars, champagne flutes clinking, captions about never settling. The first time she pulled up to our house, it was in a leased BMW, dressed like she was on her way to a club, not a casual catch-up with an old friend. From day one, Brittany didn't just visit. She broadcast herself into our marriage. It started small, a new phrase here, a sideways comment there. Emily would come home after spending the afternoon with Brittany and drop little nuggets of relationship wisdom that sounded ripped straight from a daytime talk show. Things like, marriage shouldn't feel like roommates, or successful couples challenge each other to keep the spark alive. At first, I brushed it off. People change, they get new ideas. But the tone was different. It wasn't about us building something. It was about testing what we already had. Brittany's version of love seemed to be constant fireworks and jealousy, not steady trust. The more time Emily spent with her, the more she looked at our life like it was lacking. The home we'd built wasn't enough. My long hours weren't sacrifice. They were proof I didn't care. Brittany was pouring gasoline on a fire that didn't even exist. Yet. The first arguments were over nothing. Or at least, they should have been nothing. Why didn't I plan more spontaneous dates? Why didn't I get jealous when another guy talked to her at a friend's barbecue? Why did I spend Saturday in the garage instead of doing something exciting together? These weren't conversations. They were cross-examinations. I'd try to explain that my work schedule was brutal, that the project I was on could make or break my career. She'd counter with some Brittany-sourced nonsense about quality time over money. We used to disagree and then laugh it off. Now, the smallest thing could spiral into an evening of icy silence. And every time I heard a new complaint, I could almost hear Brittany's voice behind it. It was like someone had found the weak spots in our marriage and started poking them on purpose. That winter, I was buried under the biggest job of my career. A 12-story office building in downtown Houston, 3 months behind schedule and $200,000 over budget. The kind of project that could put my name on the right lists, or tank me completely. I was working 60-hour weeks, sometimes Saturdays, juggling city inspectors, engineers, and subcontractors who always seemed one mistake away from burning the whole thing down. By the time I got home, my brain was fried, and my body felt like I'd been wrestling steel beams all day. Because I had. To me, the extra hours were an investment in our future. To Emily, or maybe to Brittany, they were proof I didn't care about the marriage. Every late night at the job site became another bullet point in her case against me, and I could feel her building that case, piece by piece. It didn't matter how many hours I worked or what bills got paid. To Emily, the problem was that I wasn't romantic anymore. She'd say it with that sharp edge in her voice like she was quoting someone else. "When was the last time you surprised me?" Or, "Don't you even care if other men flirt with me?" I wasn't the jealous type. Never had been. I trusted her, or at least I used to. But apparently not flying off the handle when she talked to another guy meant I didn't love her enough. She'd compare me to some fantasy husband who always had time for candlelit dinners and spur-of-the-moment weekends away, even if he somehow also paid the mortgage on time. It was a test I didn't know I'd signed up for, and the rules kept changing, and every time I failed, she seemed just a little more satisfied. It was a week before Christmas, and I'd just come off a 12-hour day wrangling inspectors who couldn't agree on anything. I walked through the front door, boots still dusted with concrete, dreaming about a hot shower and maybe a beer. Emily was standing in the living room next to a tall, perfect Christmas tree, silver ornaments, white lights, magazine cover ready. I told her it looked great, meant it too, but apparently great wasn't enough. She wanted excited. She wanted me to drop everything, spin her around, gush about how magical it was. When I didn't hit the reaction she'd scripted in her head, the evening turned into an interrogation about why I didn't care about the little things anymore. I didn't know it then, but I'd just failed another one of Brittany's invisible loyalty tests. And the questions were getting harder every day. A couple of nights after the Christmas tree blow-up, Stefan came over with takeout and that look on his face, the one that says he's about to drop a truth bomb. We ate in the kitchen, him leaning against the counter, chopsticks in hand. Finally, he set them down. "Jake, I'm gonna say what you already know. Brittany's doing a number on your marriage." I tried to play it off, tell him Emily was just stressed, but he shook his head. "No, man. She's manufacturing drama because Brittany told her marriage should feel like a damn reality show, and Emily's buying every word." I hated how right he sounded. Every fight, every sideways comment. It all traced back to the moment Brittany came back into her life. And I was starting to realize I wasn't just fighting with my wife. I was fighting a whole script I didn't write. It was a Thursday night in January when Emily sat me down at the kitchen table. She had that rehearsed look, like she'd been practicing in front of a mirror all day. Dinner was already over, without me, which was unusual. She folded her hands and said, "I've been thinking, I think we should take a break, just 2 weeks, to remember why we fell in love." 2 weeks? I'd heard this script before. Friends blindsided, temporary breaks that ended in lawyers' offices, and I could hear Brittany's voice in every word. I asked her what this was supposed to prove. She smiled like she was offering me a gift. "It'll give us space, make you fight for us." Fight for us? I wasn't about to dance for my own wife's attention. In that moment, something in me went cold. I looked her right in the eye and said, "Okay, if that's what you want." No begging, no grand speech, just a shrug and another bite of leftover Chinese. Her face flickered, confusion, disappointment. She'd been bracing for drama, for me to plead and promise and panic. Instead, I gave her nothing. When she went to bed that night, I pulled out my laptop. If Emily wanted to pretend we weren't married for 2 weeks, fine. I'd use that time to make sure I wasn't blindsided. I made a list, separate accounts, document every asset, talk to a lawyer. If there was going to be a fight, I'd be ready before the first punch was thrown. She thought she'd set the rules. What she didn't know was that I'd just started playing a different game entirely. The next morning, we laid it out like some kind of business deal, 2 weeks apart. No contact unless it was about the house or an emergency. She'd stay with Brittany in her downtown loft, and I'd keep the place running here. She packed 2 suitcases, mostly work clothes and a few casual outfits that looked more ready for a cocktail bar than a night in. I carried them to her Civic without a word. As she pulled out of the driveway, I noticed her smile. Not at me, at the idea of this little experiment. She thought she was in control, that she'd come back to a husband desperate to prove himself. What she didn't see was the calm in my chest as her taillights disappeared. For the first time in months, my house felt like mine again. That first night alone, I didn't realize how much tension I'd been carrying until it was gone. The house was silent, no passive-aggressive sighs from the living room, no commentary about toxic masculinity when I flipped on ESPN. I kicked off my boots, ordered a large pepperoni pizza, and cracked open a Coke. 3 movies later, the entire Predator trilogy. I was still on the couch, no one analyzing the harmful stereotypes in action films. I ate cereal for breakfast without being asked if it meant something about my mood. It wasn't just the quiet, it was the freedom to breathe in my own home again. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't walking through a minefield. And the more I relaxed, the more I wondered what exactly I was supposed to be missing. By the weekend, I'd fallen into a rhythm I hadn't had in years. Order whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Pizza boxes stacked on the counter, a cold Coke in my hand, and the TV remote firmly under my control. No, what are we watching? Debates, just me and hours of whatever I felt like. Football replays, old action flicks, even a late-night documentary about custom welding rigs. Stefan came over Saturday with Thai takeout and his laptop. We spent 3 hours setting up a fantasy football league for next season, the kind of low-stakes fun I hadn't had time for in months. "So, how's the single life treating you?" he asked between bites. I grinned. "Pretty damn good, actually." At that moment, I almost forgot this break was supposed to make me miss her. Monday morning, I brewed a pot of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. If Emily wanted 2 weeks apart, I'd make them count. I logged into every joint account we had, checking, savings, credit cards, and took detailed notes. We had about 35 grand in savings, another 15 in checking. Her student loans still sat at 28,000, a marketing degree that landed her a receptionist job. I'd been throwing an extra 400 a month at it for 2 years, trying to help her clear it faster. I moved half of the joint savings into my personal account, perfectly legal since my name was on it, and changed my direct deposit to hit my own bank instead of the joint one. She thought I was sitting here pining for her. What I was really doing was making sure I'd never get blindsided. By mid-morning, I was sitting across from Dave Harlan, a divorce attorney in Midtown Houston I'd found through a guy at work. No paperwork yet. I just wanted to know the battlefield. Dave was direct. In Texas, the house was mine. I'd bought it before the marriage, and it was titled in my name. Improvements could get messy, but since I'd done most of the work and paid for the majority, the value stayed with me. As for the rest, if things went south and I had proof of adultery, I could keep 60 to 65% of our joint assets and avoid spousal support altogether. Dave leaned back, hands folded. If you've got evidence, Jake, you'll walk away in good shape. I walked out of his office lighter. She thought this was a game. I was already memorizing the rule book. A week into the break, my phone buzzed with a single text from Emily. Hope you're thinking about us. No question mark. No follow-up. Just that. I stared at it for a minute, picturing Brittany hovering nearby, coaching her on the perfect bait. The message wasn't about connection. It was a thermometer, checking if I was warm enough to come running back. I showed it to Stefan later that night. He snorted. Translation: Why aren't you a sobbing mess yet? I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because silence was my answer. If she wanted a performance, she wasn't getting one. She thought she could reel me in with a single line. What she didn't know was that I'd already cut the hook. On day 10, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Hey, it's Brittany. How are you holding up? We'd never texted one-on-one before. My first thought was, why now? My second was, I already know the answer. I kept it short. Doing okay. This whole thing's weird. She came back fast. I know, right? Emily's been so stressed. Maybe we could grab coffee and talk about it. Coffee? With my wife's best friend? During a break? She'd been cheerleading from the sidelines? This wasn't a peace offering. It was a scouting mission. I agreed, just to see where she'd go with it. Sure, might help. As I put my phone down, I realized Brittany wasn't here to comfort me. She was here to see if the door was already open. We met at a Starbucks near her loft. I got there early, ordered a black coffee, and watched the door. When Brittany walked in, it was like she'd taken a wrong turn on her way to a nightclub. Tight black dress, full makeup, heels clicking against the tile. For just coffee, she was dressed to negotiate something more. She smiled like she'd been rehearsing it, the kind that lingers just long enough to feel intentional. Every time she leaned forward across the small table, that neckline dipped a little lower, and every laugh seemed half a beat too long. We talked about Emily, at least she did, slipped in phrases like, "You deserve to be appreciated," and, "If I were married to a guy like you." It wasn't subtle. Brittany wasn't offering sympathy. She was planting the idea of an upgrade. About halfway through our coffee, Brittany's tone shifted. She stopped fiddling with her latte, looked at me like she was about to deliver bad news on live TV. "Jake, I feel terrible telling you this, but I think you deserve to know. Emily's been seeing someone." I kept my expression neutral, like I wasn't already suspecting something. "Who?" "His name's Scott Reynolds, marketing director from Austin. They met at some work conference last month." She leaned in, her perfume thick in the air. "I saw them at dinner last night. It wasn't innocent. Scott Reynolds, mid-30s, divorced, BMW driver. The kind of LinkedIn profile that probably had him pointing at a whiteboard. Brittany's eyes searched mine, waiting for the reaction she wanted. She thought she'd just given me a gift. She had no idea she'd handed me a target. I let my eyes widen just enough. Sat back in my chair like the words had knocked the wind out of me. "Are you sure about this?" Brittany reached across the table, resting her manicured hand on mine. "I wouldn't say it if I wasn't." I gave her a slow nod, like I was trying to absorb it all. "Maybe we should talk more, somewhere quieter. I need to understand what's going on." Her lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. "Of course, whenever you're ready." Inside, I was already mapping the next move. If she was bold enough to tell me this now, she was bold enough to tell Emily something else later, or slip up entirely. I wasn't just going to catch Emily in the act. I was going to catch the person who handed her the match. That night, after the coffee date, I remembered Emily had left her iPad in the living room before she moved out. It was still on the charger, screen dark. One swipe, and I was in. Months ago, I'd helped her set up the thing. iCloud synced across all devices, password saved. She'd never bothered to log out. I opened messages. There it was, Scott Reynolds. The first week's texts were harmless. Work chatter, little jokes. But by week 2, the tone had shifted. Late-night messages about how she felt seen again. Complaints about our marriage. By week 3, it was explicit. Photos I didn't want burned into my brain. Plans for dinners and hotel rooms. The timestamp on one message caught my eye. It was sent right after she'd texted me, "Hope you're thinking about us." She'd been thinking about Scott. I kept scrolling, my thumb moving slower with each message. By the second week, Emily and Scott weren't even pretending to keep it professional. There were late-night miss you texts, inside jokes that made my stomach turn, and selfies that left nothing to the imagination. Then came the plans. Dinner at the Capitol Grill, a night at the Omni Houston Hotel. She sent him a photo of a little black dress with the caption, "For you." He replied with a reservation confirmation. The date? 2 nights ago, while she told Brittany she was running errands for her parents. Every detail was right there in black and white. The place, the time, the cost. I took screenshots of everything, saved them to my cloud. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was a loaded gun, and she'd put her fingerprints all over it. I logged into our joint credit card account, heart steady now. This was just confirmation. There it was, lined up like bullet points in a legal brief. The Capitol Grill, $186.42. Meridian, $212.85. Omni Houston Hotel, $280 for one night, 2 guests. All within the same week. All on dates that matched the messages on Emily's iPad. While I was working 60 hours a week to keep our bills paid, she was whining, dining, and checking into hotels with Scott on our account. I downloaded the statements, highlighted the dates, and saved them to my growing evidence folder. If she thought this break was her free pass, she'd just charged the receipt for her own exit package, and I was going to hand deliver it. By the time I was done, my desktop looked like a crime scene board. Screenshots of texts, saved images, PDF statements, all neatly labeled with dates and times. I dragged them into a secure folder on my cloud drive, backed them up to an external hard drive, and even printed hard copies just in case. Every file told the same story. Emily Carter, during a break she asked for, was in a full-blown affair with Scott Reynolds. Dinners, hotel rooms, intimate photos, and she'd paid for part of it with our money. I sat back in my chair, staring at the neat stack of printed pages. This wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. The next step wasn't confrontation. It was strategy. And the moment I handed this to Dave, the countdown on her marriage was going to hit 0. The next morning I walked into Dave's office with a manila folder so thick it barely closed. He didn't waste time, just opened it, spread the contents across his desk, and started scanning. Screenshots, statements, timestamps, every piece lining up in a clean, damning timeline. He flipped through them with the calm of a man who'd seen this movie before. When he looked up, there was the faintest smirk. "This is airtight, Jake. Texts, financial records, hotel receipts, all legally obtained. Under Texas law, she's looking at losing her claim to spousal support and a big chunk of the assets. We talked strategy. File on grounds of adultery, serve her at work to make it official, and keep my cards close until the moment it counted." I left his office feeling lighter. Emily thought this was a test. She was about to get her results in writing. For the next few days, I answered Brittany's texts like a man licking his wounds. Short, hesitant replies. A few thanks for being there messages. Just enough vulnerability to make her think she was getting through. When we met for coffee again, she leaned forward with that same rehearsed sympathy. "I just hate seeing you like this. You deserve better." I nodded, let my eyes drop to the table. "It's been rough. Feels like I don't even know her anymore." She squeezed my hand, holding it just a little too long. "Well, I'm here, in whatever way you need." I gave her a faint smile, as if I didn't hear the invitation hiding in those words. The truth? I wasn't interested in Brittany's comfort. I was keeping her close, because the closer she got, the more she'd reveal. By the third coffee meetup, Brittany had dropped any pretense of subtlety. The neckline dipped lower, the perfume stronger, the laughs louder. Every story about Emily came with a side of, "if I were in her shoes," followed by something designed to make me picture her there instead. She started talking about the future in vague but loaded ways. "Once all this is behind you, maybe you can be with someone who truly appreciates you, someone who knows how to treat a man." I played along, nodding slowly, like I was still too raw to think that far ahead. Inside, I was cataloging every word, every glance, proof that this wasn't just about comfort. Brittany wasn't circling my marriage out of friendship. She was circling like a shark that smelled blood in the water. I decided it was time to stop collecting hints and start building the moment. If Brittany wanted a stage, I was going to give her one. I texted her on a Tuesday evening. "Let me buy you dinner this week, for being there through all this." She replied in seconds. "Meridian? Downtown Houston's kind of place where the appetizers cost $30 and the waiters act like they're auditioning for Broadway. Perfect." I booked a table for Thursday night early enough to be busy but not loud. Then I sent a separate message, not to Brittany but to Emily. "Brittany says she needs to tell you something about Scott, said it's important you hear it in person." It was bait wrapped in bait. If both women showed up at the same table, the fireworks wouldn't need any help from me. I kept it short, no fluff. "Brittany says she needs to tell you something about Scott, said it's important you hear it in person." Emily's reply came faster than I expected. "When?" I told her Thursday, 7 p.m., Meridian downtown. I could almost picture her reaction, the flash of curiosity, the spark of suspicion. Scott's name was the perfect lure. She didn't ask why Brittany hadn't just called her. She didn't question why I'd be there. That was the thing about Emily. When she smelled drama, she'd chase it without thinking. I sat back in my chair after hitting send, letting the silence between us do its work. By Thursday night, both of them would walk into that restaurant thinking they had the upper hand. Neither of them knew they were walking straight into mine. Thursday night, I got to Meridian early, ordered a whiskey, and waited. Brittany arrived first. Black dress again, hair perfect, eyes scanning the room like she owned it. She slid into the seat across from me, smiling like this was a date. We'd barely gone through small talk when I saw Emily walk in. She spotted us immediately. Her steps slowed, her expression hardening from confusion to accusation in seconds. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, stopping at the edge of the table. Brittany straightened in her chair, feigning surprise. Emily, I was just... Emily's eyes cut to me, then back to her. You were just what? The air between them tightened. The dining room chatter seemed to fade, and I sat there, calm as stone, knowing the first spark had just hit the fuse. Emily didn't sit down. She planted her hands on the edge of the table and leaned in. You set me up with Scott, didn't you? Brittany's face went pale, then flushed. It wasn't like that. I was trying to help you. Help me? Emily's voice was already rising, drawing glances from nearby tables. You destroyed my marriage so you could steal my husband. Brittany pushed her chair back and stood. You think I wanted your mess of a marriage? I was protecting him from you. Their words started to overlap, accusations piling on top of each other. The couple at the next table leaned back in their seats, eyes wide. I just sat there, letting the storm build. This was no longer my fight. It was theirs. And from the sound of it, neither of them was going to hold back. It happened fast. 1 second, they were trading insults across the table. The next, Brittany's water glass flew, missing Emily's head by inches and shattering against the wall. Emily's response was immediate. She grabbed Brittany's designer purse, dumped it across the linen tablecloth, lipstick tubes and credit cards bouncing onto plates. Brittany lunged, hands in Emily's hair. Emily shoved back, sending silverware clattering to the floor. Diners scrambled out of the way. A waiter nearly lost a tray of martinis, and someone yelled, "World Star!" Phones were up everywhere, little red recording dots glowing like Christmas lights. The sound was a mix of shouting, breaking glass, and the maitre d' pleading for them to stop. I didn't move. I just took a slow sip of my whiskey. They wanted center stage. Now they had an audience. "5 minutes into the chaos, 2 HPD officers pushed through the restaurant doors. They took one look at the overturned table, the shattered glass, and the 2 women still clawing at each other, and their expressions said it all. They'd seen this kind of circus before. "Ladies," one officer barked, stepping between them, "you're both under arrest for disturbing the peace and assault." Emily's hair was a mess. Brittany's mascara streaked down her cheeks, but neither of them shut up. They kept shouting over each other as the cuffs went on. The officers marched them out through the dining room, past dozens of phones capturing every step. I stayed in my seat, letting the scene burn itself into everyone's memory. When the doors closed behind them, the room fell into a stunned silence. Dinner at Meridian had just become a viral clip in the making. By the next afternoon, the videos were everywhere. Multiple angles, shaky phone footage, captions like "divorce drama at Meridian" and "when your best friend steals your husband." TikTok ate it up. One clip had over 80,000 views in less than a week. Comments ranged from brutal to gleeful. "Popcorn-worthy," one read. Another said, "Team waiter who had to clean that up." Memes started popping up with still frames of Brittany mid-lunge and Emily mid-scream. Neither of them could hide. Emily's co-workers saw it. Brittany's little life coach circle saw it. The loft, the BMW, the polished Instagram feeds, all of it drowned in the sound of laughter. For once, I didn't have to say a word. The internet had done the talking for me, and it was louder than either of them could shout. 4 months later, the papers were signed. The judge didn't need much convincing. The texts, the hotel receipts, the viral video. It was an open and shut case. I kept the house, every inch of equity I'd built with my own hands. 65% of our joint assets went to me, along with my retirement accounts. No spousal support. Texas law doesn't reward adultery. Emily walked away with her Honda Civic, whatever personal belongings she could pack, and the student loans I'd been helping her pay. Brittany wasn't at court. She didn't need to be. The damage she'd done had already blown back on her, and she was still wading through the fallout. As I walked out of the courthouse, keys to my home in my pocket, I realized something. They'd both set out to take from me. In the end, I'd kept everything that mattered. When the dust settled, Emily was back living with her parents in the suburbs, nursing a criminal charge and a viral reputation she couldn't scrub off the internet. Brittany had gone quiet on social media, her life coach image permanently dented by footage of her throwing glassware in a crowded restaurant. Me? I was home. My home. No tension, no staged arguments, no one turning my hard work into a flaw. I'd swapped the decorative pillows for a real couch, upgraded to a 65-inch TV, and turned the spare room into a home office. The place felt like mine again, not just in name, but in peace. Sometimes you don't have to drag the trash to the curb. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. If you were in my shoes, how would you handle it? Drop a comment and let me know.